We do move on to number 3, the Bad Batch episode 10, Common Ground. The show opens with a separatist senator being forced to reassure his people that the Empire and joining the Empire is in their best interest. He refuses to do so, and as such is taken prisoner, but not before dispatching his droid to hire a rescue team. The Batch is the team for the job, but this time Omega is left to hang with Sid on Ord Mantell. The Batch participates in what is pretty much a standard rescue op, while Omega uses her strategy chops to win enough money playing the holo games that are in so many Star Wars properties and shows and movies that she pays off the Batch's debt to Sid.
So this was like, the standard kind of episode where they go off, but what I liked was Omega's story. Like, that was the thing where I was like, I like her storyline where she's really good at this. And it's this thing where, she's good at strategy, which is like, they need something like this going forward. Yeah. And that's where they did this. It wasn't the most exciting episode, but she shows her worth in this episode. Yeah. And because she actually does help them. Like, right. Without being on the mission, she pays off their debt, so they don't have to worry about that. And they have that like cute little game at the end where they play together. You don't know who wins or whatever, right. But it's like you assume she wins and she's gonna be a part of the mission.
Just like at the end of Rocky 2.
Yeah. So so like the mission itself was like, it was sort of funny to me because I was thinking like, I was wondering what Omega's storyline was gonna be. And because it was so easy of a mission for them. It was like the easiest mission they've had. And I'm like, well, this isn't that great. But then her storyline kind of saved it for me in a sense of like, okay, well, I get this. It's like, now she's proved her worth. She's going to be a part of these missions. She is going to, strategery, going. So I thought it was just a fine episode. It was just like most of the other episodes, this, go on a mission, do your job. But now it's like, at least Omega, is it like useless or, I hate to say that, but it's just like, she is now showing that she can help, even though, she's small and doesn't have a lot of like abilities, but she has this, and this may end up being the most important thing. And it might be one of the reasons why everyone's after her.
So. Yeah, I think that this was kind of a world building episode in terms of like showing how the Empire is slowly starting to transition from the Republic to the Empire, which is something that I've said throughout that I like seeing. It's kind of weird to get a world building episode this late into the season. I mean, it's episode 10 out of 14. So we only have 4 more episodes left. So it was kind of strange to get that, but this wasn't like a very super action-packed episode. The rescue was very standard procedure, I would say. Nothing too wild and crazy. There weren't any like surprise like villains or cameos or anything like that. It was just kind of, I don't want to say it was a filler episode, but it was kind of a filler episode. But I do think that it like fleshed out the world and like what's kind of going on in the galaxy a little bit more. It also got me thinking that something that I'd really like to see Star Wars explore, and I know I've talked at length about really wanting that time between the prequels and the original trilogy kind of explored more. I think that's right for good storytelling. Something else that I would really like to see is them elaborating on the whole separatist thing that took place during the prequels, because if you really look at how things shook out, they were right.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And like, they separate from the Republic. The Jedi have to form this army, the army of the Republic, which was the Clone Wars, which was ultimately their undoing. There's a lot of cool tapestry there that they can play with.
Yes.
The other thing that really got me thinking, and it was the first scene where they're in this kind of plaza. We don't get a lot of Star Wars that takes place on very habitated, like, I don't want to say advanced, but more civilized planets. I think you see it a little bit in the prequels with Naboo and Coruscant. Not so much it all anywhere else.
Right.
It's a lot of like wild, uncivilized Tatooine, Jakku, Hoth, Dagobah, Endor. They're all very like wild planets. You know what I mean? So
Right.
Yavin 4, they're not civilized. So that's another thing too, that I mean, they had some cool scenes in the prequels in Coruscant with like Obi-Wan flying and the levels of the planet, how it's just one giant city and everything, which was really cool. But I think that that's something, and I'm sure that part of it was when Lucas was making the original trilogy, it was just easier to shoot in a giant desert than it was like in a futuristic city. Like you would have had to figure out a way to make that. So, but I think now that they have the technology, I think that that's something that I'd like to see them play a little bit more with. Because even in The Mandalorian, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of like, okay, I'm going to this like city. You know what I mean? It's all like smaller outposts and things like that. So that's just some of the areas that this episode did more for me in just thinking about Star Wars as an overall thing than it did like, here's this episode. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's just kind of where this episode took me. It got me thinking a lot about different things with Star Wars. So I guess that's kind of cool. I guess.
Yeah, and like you said, it was just like it was filler, but it wasn't filler for an important character, which we are led to believe she is a very important character too.
Right.
So I think that's important too. It's just, yeah, it is nice to go off and think about the other parts of Star Wars that still matter. And that we don't know what's actually, that middle ground, which is what these, TV series and some of the movies are trying to fill in and tell us. And I think that's very cool. And to make it a cartoon series that is ultimately still built for kids. But these movies
man, they use the word draconian in this episode.
I know.
That shit ain't for kids.
Yeah, it was hilarious to me. It was just, but I still think the show's good. It just, this episode was like, there's 14 episodes. Yeah. Nobody does that anymore. So I think it's going to be fine. I think we're going to end up being like, this is a good season of something like this. All this does for me with The Mandalorian and this is like, God, I just hope the next movies are good. That's like what I keep thinking, because that's why you become a Star Wars fan. I watched the first Star Wars before I went into work on July 4th because it's always on like TBS or TNT. Yeah. I don't know. I could go and watch it on Disney Plus easily anytime I want, but it was just on and it has commercials. And I'm like, let me just put this on because I love this movie. And I don't want to have to think about, and it has the commercials, but it was just like, it was still cool to watch. I've seen the movie 100 times and it's like, it's still fun for me. Like you said, this is, I don't know if it's MCU or Star Wars, but this is still like one of my favorite things in life. I love it. Yeah. And, as much as they try to make me hate it, I still love it.
Here's where I'm at with that is I love the MCU. Avengers 2012 is landmark, right? And Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame are landmark movies. And that's great. But none of them will be as important to me into movies at large as A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. They're just not.
I mean, I would argue that Empire Strikes Back might be the most important movie made post 1975.
Top 3.
Yeah, I mean,
Godfather Part 2, Pulp Fiction.
And it's like, is it? I don't even know if it's like. I don't even know if Godfather Part 2 is more important. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I'm just saying, like, the importance of the Empire Strikes Back is because it like plays on a movie that did very well, for what it was, A New Hope, which was just Star Wars. And then you take it and you make a better movie.
Right. Yeah.
You make what is still the greatest movie of all these, which we said.
So imagine how good Avatar 2 will be. Just one other quick Star Wars thing was Star Wars Visions, which is going to be 8 anime style shorts will be released on Disney Plus on September 22nd. I've seen a few of the still shots of the art.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for this.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it's going to
cool.
be freaking weird and it's
Yep.
going to be very different. And I'm
Yep.
all about that. But here's the other thing is I saw a lot of people online bitching about, oh my God, Star Wars is anime. Well, guess what? Jedi were originally envisioned as being samurai. So fuck yourself.
Yep. Yeah.